and welcome to another episode of the F1 Breakdown podcast. We have had two Grand Prix since the last podcast that we did. We've had the Monaco Grand Prix and the Canadian Grand Prix. We will be reviewing and looking at those two Grand Prix, but an interesting story that came out of the Monaco Grand Prix, which has been resolved today, is the Mercedes TestGate scandal that they did, having a secret, or as Mercedes say, just a private 3-day test from Pirelli. They didn't mean it to be secret, but that's how it's been named as the media, and that's how all the other teams, especially Red Bull, have been calling it, the secret 1,000-kilometer test. But that has been resolved today, with Mercedes being banned from the young drivers test that is going to be happening in Silverstone in July. People already saying, is this the correct punishment? It's not as big as teams would have liked, probably, for Mercedes, because they did go against the rules, whereas this young drivers test is testing within the rules. Yes, they are banned from it, and teams, obviously, who are taking part in this young drivers test are able to get an advantage or test new products, because they will, they will be stupid if they don't test in new products and new aero packages and new packages, basically, in this test. But Mercedes have been banned from it. People are expecting to be chucked out of the race for Silverstone. Points deduction, which we saw with McLaren back in 2008. They got a points deduction for lying with Hamilton about not giving him back a place for Jarno Trulli in the Australian Grand Prix. That caused a deduction, I think, in points, or it's turning off. And the Spygate incident as well added to that, where McLaren were spying on Ferrari, I believe, as well, at the same Grand Prix, which caused an overall deficit in constructors' points in 2007, I believe that was. And for the 2008 season, they had no points, and that's why they had the last numbers 22 and 23 on their cars, with Heikki Kovalainen and Lewis Hamilton. But anyway, we'll be quickly now looking back at the Monaco Grand Prix. To be honest with you, Monaco Grand Prix, everyone says, yeah, there's a possession and it is hard. There is not much overtaken in Monaco, but still, the fact when they're driving flat out between the barriers, especially for the swimming pool section, is one of the sections I love the most in Monaco. And it's just pure, it's just like the Porsche curbs at the moment in Le Mans, which is happening this weekend. Just watching them go through there just gives me goosebumps. It's exactly the same what happens in the swimming pool section in Monaco. But Rosberg won that race, yes. Mercedes finally won a race. Rosberg, the man doing it 30 years after his father had Keke Rosberg won in Monaco. And it was probably the race that, at this stage in the season, we probably expected Mercedes to win, because they've had the fastest car in the race, in the qualifying strategy, but not in the race. But with limited overtaking opportunities, they just had to cover other drivers in the pit stops in order to overtake or maintain their position in the lead. And that's what other teams tried to do, try and overtake them in the pits. That's what they thought was the only option, to try and overtake the Mercedes and Nico Rosberg, but it failed. And Rosberg still, even though that's only one part of the strategy, and with Monaco it's down to the driver, because how hard or how they work the strategy in Monaco, it depends on the driver, because one error can lead to the whole strategy being a total waste of time in that respect. So Rosberg still needed to drive, so it was still a fully deserved win, because he still needed to make sure that he was on the pace. He still needed to make sure that he had enough time and was real cool and calm and collective through the corners, so he didn't hit the barriers, because it's so easy to hit the barriers in Monaco. But then looking at Canada was a real reinstatement of Sebastian Vettel's pace. He just completely blitzed the field, which is not good for the championship, because he is beginning to romp away with it. He's 36 points clear. That's over a race victory clear. And if he didn't finish the British Grand Prix next weekend and Fernando Alonso won, there'd still be a 14-point gap, which even at this stage of the season is still a big gap. And so it is sooner or later, I think, going to be in Sebastian Vettel's hand. And for the championship and for the sport itself, I hope not. But Vettel, he's doing well, world champion, triple world champion, doing what he does best, and that is, winning races. And he knows how to win. He's not stupid. He knows how to win a Formula One race. He knows how to dominate, and it's coming to his advantage. And yet again, it could be a fourth. He could equal Michael Schumacher 4 seasons in a row, winning the world championship, which is, is good for him. Equals a record with Schumacher, which is big for him because obviously 2 German drivers, so equaling that will be cool for him. But for the sport, it's starting to get a bit frustrating with Sebastian Vettel winning, and I can understand the fans and everyone saying, "Oh God, it's another Vettel domination again this season," and there's no watching the sport anymore because they know who's going to win, which I can agree with and disagree with, because I don't think, because back in the Schumacher era, Schumacher was winning every race, but Vettel's not winning every race at the moment, but he's always up there. He's not had a problems like Alonso. He's not having problems like Raikkonen's having at the moment. He just hasn't had a problem yet. He's always been there. Whereas Alonso's had his incident in Malaysia. Raikkonen is starting to fall off the pace, not because he's falling off the pace, because the car seems to be falling off the pace, and is not really living up to expectations at the moment. But as I said, Red Bull with Sebastian Vettel, Mark Webber's had his incidents in China. Drivers have had incidents where they've lost points, but Vettel's yet to lose points. So, if anything, something could happen to Vettel over the next coming races, which, 14 points, say if he didn't finish the British Grand Prix and Fernando Alonso did win the race, 14 points is still clawable back. You can still get that back, and suddenly the championship is opened up again. But he does have a commanding position at the moment in the championship. So, people like Alonso, Hamilton, Rosberg, Webber, Raikkonen all have to get in front and try and beat Sebastian Vettel. They'll be the man that they know they have to beat in qualifying and have to beat in the race so they can catch him. So they can't let him get on pole. They know that themselves. The Mercedes might have the best chance of not making him be on pole, but the Mercedes don't have the race pace. So Sebastian Vettel should easily overtake him, especially at the British Grand Prix. There were some good overtaking moves, especially down at the Stowe corner. And you've got the DRS straight down the Wellington straight. Cops, it's a risky one, but you can possibly do it. But there are overtaking moves at Silverstone for Vettel if he needed to get past. And Vettel, people say can't overtake, but I think he's proved now, especially during Monza, that he can overtake, and at Abu Dhabi they can overtake. But still, things went his way. But that's if you're a world champion, things need to do go your way, and that's what's happened. Especially in Abu Dhabi last year, where when he pitted, the safety car came out, so everyone has to reduce speed. He's virtually just had a free pit stop, and he's able to catch up to the field, and that helped him a big time getting his third place in Abu Dhabi last year, and put him in a very strong position for the World Championship. If those safety cars didn't happen at that time, Vettel wouldn't have won the championship. And it would have been Fernando Alonso who won the championship. But when you're a world champion and when you're in that situation, you need to have that luck, and that's what Sebastian Vettel has at the moment. But we never know when that luck will run out. It took a very long time for Schumacher's luck to run out. So we don't know when Vettel's is. But I'm not saying I hope it's soon. But, for the sport, hopefully he runs out of luck soon. Because, yes, it is becoming frustrating watching him win and get a bigger gap in the championship. It's not the fact that he's winning that's annoying. It's the fact that he's not having a bad race where other people have had a bad race. So therefore he's still getting 18, 15, 12 points with people getting 4 or 6, and he's gaining 8 points in that retrospect in the championship. So finally, just to end this podcast, before, because we're 10 minutes in at the moment, is the Mercedes TestGate scenario. Was it correct? I think they got off a bit lightly, to be honest with you. A test session in, it just equals it out. It just balances it out. It's not really a big penalty. I don't know. That's what's come out. It's only 3 o'clock when this podcast. It's just gone 3 o'clock, and I've got 1:30. We were waiting for the results or something to be said by the FIA in order to do this podcast, because we thought this would be the right time so we could talk about the Mercedes and what the results are in this podcast. But I can't see that seems like not a very sporting penalty. Yes, okay, they're not doing the young drivers test, but people who are doing the young drivers, it just equals it out in a way. So yeah, you can understand why they've been banned from it, because it equals it out. So now everyone's virtually doing the same amount of testing. But the thing is that the teams that are doing the young drivers test now, it's within the regulations, whereas Mercedes was without the regulations, was outside the regulations of the sport. So yeah, they're balancing it out, but I don't know if it's totally fair. I think Mercedes have got off quite lightly, because you could have easily, the FIA could have said, you're not going to score any constructors' points for the next 2 races. For the battle with like Force India, and they can get points, and McLaren, but and Lotus and Ferrari and Red Bull get further away. So therefore, 2 races would hurt Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship, or they could have been thrown out of the Silverstone Grand Prix and not have been allowed to race. They could have been even thrown out of the whole championship. I think that would have been extremely harsh to throw them out. Or the drivers couldn't score any drivers' points for a few races, which would hurt them as well, which means they wouldn't be able to score any constructors' points as well in that respect. So you can see that the penalty could have been harsher, and maybe could have been deserved a harsher penalty maybe from it, but we don't know. We heard that the FIA, that there was a phone call between Mercedes and Charlie Whiting, and there was a phone call, but apparently Charlie Whiting had said that the test can go ahead, but every team has to be there. Every team has to be offered to be there, but that criteria from Charlie Whiting was not met. That's what we've heard over the last day and this morning, that's what happened. But that's why. So they said you will only get permission to do this test if you get other teams know, and they will participate in this test as well. But that criteria wasn't met, so therefore that's why the FIA say that Mercedes lawfully given to do this test, because they didn't meet the criteria that was set by the FIA in order for them to have permission. And that is why they have been under investigation, and that's why things have gone out of control like it has at the moment. But I think they did get off quite lightly, Mercedes. I don't know what your guys' opinions are. Maybe you might have a different opinion. Maybe you think it's the right thing to do to balance it out, makes it fair, so they'd had an unfair advantage, but that unfair advantage is being cancelled out because they're not going to the young drivers test in Silverstone in middle July. I think it's the 16th, 17th and 18th. I think the dates have been confirmed for the young drivers test at Silverstone, so we now know that Mercedes will not allowed to participate in that test. But is it fair? So it's balancing it out in a way, but should they have got a bigger penalty than they should have? That is the big question. And that is it for this podcast. We are a couple days away from Silverstone. More news stories will be posted online on the build up to the Silverstone Grand Prix. Make sure you like us on Facebook. You get all the latest news, all the gossip. This could be going down, like Toyota could be returning to Formula 1 next year at the moment under a new name, Lexus, which people found out through Facebook. On our channel, you got Twitter as well. So Twitter, we do practice updates on Twitter. So if you're away, you can get, and you have your phone, and you can find out what's going on in practice and qualifying. And then we got the YouTube channel, of course, which you can subscribe to, which we'd be very happy about. Make our day really. We'd be very, very welcome a subscriber. But thank you for listening. And hopefully the Silverstone Grand Prix will be a very good and entertaining Grand Prix for Formula 1. And British fans are very good. Let us know if you're going to the British Grand Prix or where you'll be watching it from, and who you're rooting to win. We'd love to hear any of your comments and ideas about the podcast, and your comments. Just what do you think about the Mercedes TestGate scandal? And from us, we'll bid you farewell until the Silverstone Grand Prix.